Today on Dr. J's Self-Help, we talk about business. Remember, if you have a great idea for a business, somebody's probably already taken it.
Hello and welcome to Dr. J's Self-Help. I, as always, am Dr. J, and with me, of course, as always, is Catherine the Loser.
Thank you so much for that delightful intro, Mr. J.
It's Dr. J, but thank you.
I have a guest for you today.
What, really?
Yes, Arkham Asylum has started a pilot project with pairing up our members here with successful business people in the surrounding areas and, in fact, across the country.
Yay!
So this person is a successful businessman, has many business ventures, and he has flown in from Springfield to be here today and to talk to you about starting your own businesses, maybe expanding your portfolio to things that don't involve chemicals and killing. And we'll also talk about like how relationships can change when you embark on that kind of venture. What do you think of that?
Well, I've never liked any of your ideas before, but I've always been open to ridiculing them.
That's a surprisingly positive outlook that you've had to one of my ideas.
Yes.
Well, let me introduce him. This is Mr. Burns.
Oh, yes, hello. Oh, it's an honor to be here today at Smithers. What is this place? Dr. J's Self-Help, yes. I am Charles Montgomery Burns, American. Ooh.
Yes, and can you say something about the businesses you run very successfully?
Of course. Which one would you like me to talk about?
What one are you most proud of?
Oh, well, that is a bit interesting there. You see, I've always enjoyed my nuclear power plant and supplying Springfieldians with power at only 3 times the cost of actual production. And of course, 3 times the cost of surrounding areas like Shelbyville and Ogdenville.
Interesting. And you're a self-made business.
Yes, of course. I started off with nothing but the clothes on my back and a wonderful teddy named Bobo, which, Smithers, how are we doing on the Bobo sightings? We've been looking for 75 minutes, sir. Unfortunately, Arkham Asylum doesn't have your teddy. Oh, well, trifling bad. Okay, So, as I was saying, when I was playing with my teddy bear, I got into league with this cold, heartless billionaire. I left my family at an early age and started my life as a heir to a fortune. And that was very self-making for me. Every sort of business whatsoever that I have has been by my own 2 hands, you know?
Interesting. And I'll introduce you to Joker here. He is one of our he's in recovery. One of our patients.
And I believe the word she's looking for is host of Dr. J's Final Help. I am Dr. J, and it is a pleasure to meet you, sir. Oh, it's cheerfully good to meet you as well.
Yes, and Dr. J has been looking into expanding into different businesses, such as this podcast, and other things that maybe are different from his normal purview. Do you have any advice to give, Joker? Do you have any questions to ask?
Of course. Okay, so, Mr. Burns, may I call you Mr. Burns? I prefer you call me Evil Overlord, but yes, Mr. Burns is quite nice. Okay, so, I have to ask this. You know, how do you treat your employees, especially the ones who have been there with you since day one as you build up your businesses? Well, I view my employees as a family, and if they step out of line, I release the hounds. The hounds are my true family. No, no, treat your employees as if they are cogs in the machine, and nothing more. Basic health and safety regulations only really matter if there's an inspector around. Of course, you want to keep your wages low so you can keep your profits high. That is the main focus of business in a capitalistic world.
Um, Sorry, when you say hounds, are you referring to
Yeah.
actual hounds?
Yes, of course, literal bloodhounds. Yes. I
I'm
keep.
fairly
I
certain that's illegal.
no, no, no. Not if you bribe the courts. Ooh, tell me more about this bribery. Well, you see, the courts in Springfield are terribly cheap and loose when it comes to the rules. So you grease their wheels a little bit and they overlook some things like, yearly safety checks and employee complaints. Interesting.
Maybe we can focus on um, more general things. Like, what are some things you want to think of when you're starting a new venture, a new business?
Oh,
Because
yes,
I
yes, of
know
course.
you've started many.
Yes, yes. Number one, of course, how much money can you make? How quickly? And can you sell it with a philanthropic edge? For example, I was one of the co-founders of the Little Lisa Recycling Center in Springfield. We took together a bunch of plastic, those things that soda cans or other things come in, those little plastic things. Yes, yes, I do. Well, we took a bunch of those, got them all together, and put them into the ocean. And as soon as we put them into the ocean, and then retracted the nets, we got hundreds and hundreds of thousands of fish outside of the sea, outside of the ocean. We were keeping it nice and clean. And then, of course, the fish made excellent Little Lisa slurry, which went out into the environment and made everything so, so, so much healthier. I see. Catherine,
Um,
this is the best guest you've ever had.
you know what? We'll focus on the positives instead of any laws that are being violated. What do you think about market research? Everybody seems to say before you start a new business, you should do market research first before even funding it.
Yes, absolutely. It has to have sex appeal and a catchy name. Then all the small-minded simpletons of the world will flock to it like a bunch of rooting dodo birds.
Okay.
I'm
What
I'm right with him there. So what sort of things are you looking for when it comes to sex appeal? Well, number one, I, for example, launched the Mr. Burns Casino in Springfield. Now, casinos are wrought for the idea of, making it big, selling the big American dream. So, what better way to promote that than my face, my beautiful face on a mermaid's body? Like I said, sex appeal and a catchy name. Sex appeal and a catchy name. So I actually have a question bouncing off of that. You see, I have a bit of a problem, when it comes to bats and the law, and apparently there are some vigilantes or some law officials that cannot be bribed or corrupted. How do you go about removing them? Oh, why, yes, of course. See, I keep my staff fraught with hired goons. They beat him up. I remain, relatively unscathed. My hands remain clean.
um okay. Do you mind if I ask, do you ever get like outside help with a business? Do you ever seek out experts such as accountants for, registering your business, or um tax refunds, and if you bring in lawyers for your creating your documents when you start?
Oh, yes, of course. It is very, very, very important to have a sea of high-priced lawyers ready to handle any lawsuit that may come against you when it comes to a business. I remember when I started the Monty Burns Germ Warfare Lab. It was good to have the lawyers to explain to the police why a bunch of freewheeling hippies could not shut you down. And for that, I thank my lawyers. Ooh, germ warfare! What a man!
Okay, I'm beginning to wonder what the requirements for this program were, but continuing, how do you feel about starting a business with friends? Some people seem to think that it's a bad idea. Others say that it's the only way to ensure a business, everybody in the business is invested. What do you think about crossing those personal and professional lines?
Well, it's a two-pronged sword, really. I myself don't have a lot of friends, but that's because I've devoted all of my life to my business. So long as I am leader, I am king, and my voice is the only one that matters, I don't need friends per se. But that being said, if there are friends that you can take advantage of for the purposes of growing your business, or better yet, crippling theirs so that you can grow yours, why, that's all the sweeter. I remember one time where I had a bet with a power plant owner in Ogdenville. This is what I mentioned before. I can't remember if it was Ogdenville or Shelbyville. It doesn't matter. He's bankrupt anyway. We bet $1 million on our power plant softball teams when we played against each other. Now, of course, I knew in my bones that my team was superior, especially when I dipped into the covers and got 9 actual baseball all-stars. Now, thanks to one Daryl Strawberry and, of course, what was that name of that boob from Sector 7G? Oh, yes, Homer Simpson. I managed to win $1 million by spending way more of it to ensure that my team was superior. Now, what I didn't think, or what I didn't say, rather, was that $1 million crippled my friend out of business, and now he works for me. It was excellent. This is by far the greatest guest you have ever come up with for Dr. J, Catherine. I'm impressed. Tell me more about the exploitation of friends and the exploitation of the workforce.
Wait, can I interject just a small question? Mostly because I'm happy to see Joker taking a positive outlook on life. But you said that you don't have many friends. I was just wondering who the gentleman sitting beside you is, if not your friend.
Oh, well, this, of course, is Smithers. His family's worked for me for generations. Unfortunately, his father died in a nuclear accident, and I took him in as my butler and my ward. Really? Are you saying all wards, all little people that you take in are sycophantic freaks? Well, I mean, to an extent. He decided to walk out on me after I attempted to block out the sun in Springfield, but we've patched things up ever since.
Wait, you tried to block out the sun?
Well, you see, quite frankly, it was very simple. After, the one big thing about business, actually, before I go on to my story, is you need to make sure you know where the resources are coming from and how quickly you can make them. See, I noticed a local school, it was called Springfield Elementary, struck oil on its property. Now, unfortunately, it didn't pump the oil first. And when I went to see how I could, acquire the oil so that I could sell it back at a marginally higher value, and they rejected me. I decided to build my own oil welling plant so that I could pump free of the town. I could pump free the school, of course, of all of its oil resources. But anyway, that's another story for another day. Anyway, I had decided at that point I was feeling on top of the world, so a why not build a small thing to encapsulate the sun, to block it out entirely from Springfield, because I held a monopoly on all of Springfield's power. So think about it: street lights, street lamps, sundials, headlights, all powered by Burns brand electricity.
Fascinating.
I agree. So fascinating.
Dr. J, do you have any follow-up questions to ask? Maybe advice on ideas you yourself have?
Oh, of course. So, number one, of course, is my big Valentine's Day special is coming out next week. And in relation to that, I thought to myself, why not make myself a Valentine's album? Sort of cross promote. Now, of course, I'm thinking about whether or not it's a good idea to have a live orchestra or just bring some things in.
Well, I'm not really familiar with a live orchestra per se, or the music industry, but I always say authenticity is the best policy. People consider me an ogre, and well, they'd be right to do so. So I would say authenticity is the best policy. Now, of course, if you do not have the funds, it's very important that you know the weaknesses of your staff. Like, for example, my staff in the nuclear power plant, regardless, they are all fairly low-skilled, fairly incompetent workers. They need my job in order to feed their families because they'd be unemployable everywhere else. So, I mean, think about that, dangle their family's health, their friends' health. Make sure that they miss a few gigs until they do what you want, Several things that you can do in order to make sure that your business prevails or that your dream prevails.
I see. That's quite interesting. Now, of course, safety violations, you said. I, of course, am big into the Ace Chemical Plant facility. I've robbed there several times. Now, can I complain if the chemicals that I rob hurt the people who I employ to transport them if everything is not up to code?
Oh, of course you can, of course.
That is very interesting. Wouldn't you agree, Catherine?
Yes, it's very interesting. I remember you mentioned an employee, a Homer.
Ooh, who?
I don't know.
Simpson. Yes.
Yeah. So there was a note I noticed saying that he worked for some kind of a power plant for a while elsewhere.
Yes. Oh.
There was a spy issue or something.
Oh my heavens to Bitsy.
How? Because you mentioned the employee by name, I was just wondering if that was sort of you allowing your employee to go and help another venture, or if this was something else.
Oh, yes. Well, there was this one time, for God knows whatever reason, Homer Simpson saved my plant from a coal meltdown. So naturally, of course, I sacrificed Simpson at great expense from the other power plant, of course, in order for him to show with them his genius methods. I can't tell you how much I profited from having Simpson go over there, and the fact that it was just a fluke afterwards just made everything better. Wouldn't you say, Smithers?
Yes, sir. This is beautiful.
This seems to have gone in a different direction than I thought. Joker, do you see any benefit from the program Arkham is running?
Oh, absolutely. If you can network with a guy like Charles Montgomery Burns, American. I mean, he didn't even get to the part where what was it? What was it? A canary actually runs your company. So even if your high-priced lawyers, bribery, and intimidation fail, you still succeed. Oh yes. Yes, of course. You're thinking of the Canary and Burns and the Patsy. Why, of course.
This has been very eye-opening into the world of business for me.
Catherine, how much research did you do on Montgomery Burns?
Montgomery Burns was matched to you according to the panel here. I had no say in it.
Oh, really? Charles Montgomery Burns is one of the most infamous businessmen of all time. One of the most successful businessmen of all time. Do you want to know how he got there? Good old-fashioned grit. Good old-fashioned gumption.
Sure.
And of course, all of the casual misdemeanors.
Casual.
Yes, casual. Well, I probably shouldn't say this one out loud, but as a young child, on one of my, heartless billionaire father's carnival trips, there was this small Irishman. I ran into him every time I could with a bumper car to crush his spirit. And then I used that same philosophy to crush the moral and the spirit of every one of my employees. It's excellent.
It's very enlightening. Thank you for your time. I heard that they wanted you to speak to a couple other people here. So if you would like to go and do that, I'm sure Dr. J and I can wrap it up here for you.
No, let's keep it. Oh, you're actually okay. Yes, security, unfortunately, is here to escort me out. Thank you so much for having me on your program. Smithers, be sure to create a thank you card for Arkham Asylum and, of course, for my dear esteemed friend, Dr. J. Thank you so much for having me on the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Are you going to say it?
Now that was a real guest. Fantastic work, Catherine.
I was really expecting you to say I told you so.
Oh. Well, since you wanted me to say that. I told you so! I told you so!
All right, I will leave next week.
I'm going to make a guess myself. I'm going to match him up on the panel. I'm going to rehabilitate the Joker. There's no rehabilitating me. Got it? None. And we will see you all next week.
Yes, and next week Joker will be picking the guest.
Next week is going to be Dr. J's big, sexy Valentine's Day special. Don't miss it.